Hi, and welcome to the City Show. I'm your host, John Zimkus. Once again, I'm a guest. This time I'm the guest of City Manager Scott Brunkham. Thanks for having us, Scott.
Yeah, glad we could kind of do it up here in my office.
Yes.
It's a little bit of a change.
Well, it's a time for the state of the city, Scott. And how is the city doing?
Yeah, we're doing really well. So, financially, our income tax revenue continues to be strong. We see good growth, good job creation within our community. And that really allows us to take that revenue and reinvest it back into public safety, back into our roads, back into our infrastructure. So I'm sure folks have noticed quite a bit happening, last few years, construction-wise, and I would definitely look for that to continue.
Is the population growing?
We grow. I get asked that a lot. We're growing on average about 1% a year. So. I describe it as slow, steady growth. Certainly there's some larger projects development-wise that are getting ready to start. That's probably going to create an uptick in that. But I think, we're at a little over 21,000 people. 10 years ago, we were at a little over 20,000. So, we're seeing growth, but I wouldn't say that it's overwhelming growth by any means. Within the city of Lebanon. Now, when you get out into the township, obviously they're experiencing growth as well around us.
Well, the population isn't changing that much, but what is changing in the city?
We're starting to see a lot more kind of commercial business investment in our community, so that's good to see. I would say the other big change is just a lot of work on our roads. So if you went back maybe 6-7 years ago, we were spending about $5 million a year on our road program. That's doubled the last few years, and that's going to continue to be kind of at that $10 million a year level moving forward for the next few years. So I think people see a lot more construction activity taking place. Just making sure we're keeping up with aging infrastructure, and then redevelopment. So you're starting to see, some tear downs and rebuilds, kind of like the Valvoline. Dunkin' Donuts is getting ready to, build a new building where the Bob Summerall Tire building is now. So it's good to see kind of that public and private investment in our community.
Now, as far as the roads go, we get a lot of grants because they're major thoroughfares, right?
Right. Yeah, we get grants from a lot of different areas. So, if you look at the last 5 years, the city has received over $30 million in grants. A lot of that's state grants, some federal grants. But, like Cherry Street is under construction right now. That's not a state route, but we are getting a $900,000 state grant to support it. So it's really a mix. We've got some great staff here who are really good about identifying and pursuing grant opportunities. And some of that is obviously also associated with state routes as well.
Now, the Cherry Street improvement, that's also sewage and such, isn't
right.
it?
Yeah. We've really been kind of chipping away at reconstructing our old roads that have that really steep crown. They have old water mains underneath it. They have old sewer mains under the pavement. So when we go into a road like that, we're really doing a comprehensive replacement that includes the water main, the sewer main. Typically, Duke Energy is replacing the gas main. And then you see kind of that final, new pavement, new curb. But it's much more complicated than just putting pavement down. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Now, as the historian of the Harmon Museum and the Golden Limb across the street, I'm always interested in new things about history. Has anything been discovered when you're tearing up Cherry Street?
Not Cherry Street, not this section. Now, up by Pleasant Park, when they got into doing some of the utility work, they found this huge vault under the pavement. This thing was like 20 feet wide, Best we can tell is it was maybe some sort of a water cistern under the pavement, because there used to be the old schoolhouse where the park is. But we didn't expect to see that. Obviously, we had to fill it in. So yeah, we do periodically run into unexpected things, and it usually involves kind of these large vaults or kind of cisterns under the pavement that were installed, I guess, late 1800s, early 1900s. It's been a while, so yeah.
Now, as far as the major roads go, which ones are being worked on this year and which are coming up next year?
Right. So last year, we're kind of in the middle of a 3-year, what we call urban paving program, where all of the state routes in Lebanon are getting resurfaced. So last year, Columbus Avenue, US 42, and West Main Street were the 2 state routes. This year, you're going to see that same type of work happen on Cincinnati Avenue, and then also East Main Street. And then in 2025, that'll be the final year of our urban paving program, and that'll be North Broadway.
How far on East Main Street will you go?
It'll go all the way to the corporation limits, which is just beyond kind of Stubbs Mill Road there. So it'll go everything in the city. When it's all said and done, pretty much every length of state route in the city will have been repaved over the last 3 years.
Will Cincinnati Avenue's work go beyond Gloucester Road?
It does a little bit. That's about where our corporation limits are, is down in that area. And then we do have programmed extensive work on Gloucester Road. That's probably the other kind of big road project. We had originally anticipated moving into construction later this year with the widening of Gloucester Road and then construction of a roundabout there at the intersection of Cincinnati Avenue and Gloucester Road. But Duke Energy has a transmission main that runs down Gloucester that has to get relocated first before we can do the road improvements. And their lead time on their metal steel poles is about 18 months. So that project's going to get pushed into construction season 2025, but it's going to be, that is a much needed improvement. Not only the width of Gloucester Road, but that intersection of Cincinnati Avenue and Gloucester is a high accident intersection with some sight distance issues.
And so we're going to have a roundabout.
It's going to be a roundabout, yeah. So, we're kind of carrying the trend. I know Mason built a couple new roundabouts as you head down 42 into Mason, and it really is a good fit. We had traffic engineers take a look at how best to improve that intersection while keeping traffic moving through it, and roundabout was a good fit at that location.
Now, some people may say, well, why fix Gloucester? Practically nobody lives there, but that's a crucial road.
It is, yeah. It gets a lot of, with the construction of Neil Armstrong Way, that was completed several years ago. There's a lot of folks now who, Gloucester Road's that connection between US 42 or Cincinnati Avenue and State Route 63, which is Main Street. So it's getting more and more traffic as this whole area develops. And, it's a substandard road, so it's much needed.
And it's also our main sewage treatment?
Yeah, a pumping station. That's we completed a $12 million replacement of our sewage pump station on Gloucester Road, which really, all of the sewer flow from probably 80% of the community goes to that location and then is pumped into our wastewater treatment plant. And, during heavy rain events, when rainwater would get into our sanitary collection pipes, that whole system would surcharge. So obviously we needed to kind of fix that overflow situation at the pump station, but we also needed to make sure we sized it for the growth in the community. So that was a big undertaking and a project that's wrapped up now for the most part. The pump station's working. We kind of looked at, a couple years ago before the new pump station was in place, we looked at a rain event and how much sewer we discharged through an overflow pipe a couple years ago versus the same rain event that happened a few months ago. So obviously the rain event that happened a few months ago, we didn't have any sort of overflows or discharges. A couple years ago, it was 3 million gallons. So huge improvement and most people don't see that. They don't, and that's kind of our wastewater sewer folks like to kind of be off, off the radar, right? Because usually if you're calling them, there's a problem. But that was a huge project in terms of just the infrastructure for our community.
Well, you're right. That's what you want to happen with your something like waste treatment.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be noticed.
You just want it to work, right? Yeah.
And people forget that a lot of hard work and a lot of money has to go toward that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge infrastructure investment on the part of the city. Those guys, they do an outstanding job operating our wastewater plant. It's received recognition for a number of years now through the National Clean Water Association, because our wastewater plant discharges into the Little Miami River, which is obviously a scenic river. So very high standards that we need to meet through the EPA, and our folks there do a great job of it.
Well, you have people working at the wastewater treatment plant and other things. How many people are employed by the city?
We have about 160 full-time employees now. Our staffing has grown over the years. A big part of that has been working on transitioning our fire department from kind of a part-time staffing model to a full-time. But we've also made investments in police department and some other departments. So we're at about 160 full-time employees at this point.
Now, speaking of utilities, you're going to be going into solar for a little bit.
We are, yeah. This is a big project. It's about a $13-14 million project, and I tell folks, the first thing we did is just did a feasibility study on solar arrays, just to look at, does it make financial sense for the city to make this type of investment. So as we got into the feasibility study, what it came back with is projected savings of about $27 million to the city and ultimately our ratepayers over the life of the asset. So based on kind of that financial feasibility study and the fact that where these are getting built, it's city-owned property that's in the floodplain, so it really can't be developed for any other purpose. So it's really a good fit for solar arrays. And I tell people it's a little bit different than maybe if you look at doing solar on your rooftop or if you have a residence. For us, a lot of that savings with doing on-site generation like solar is avoidance of transmission fees. So right now, we as a city, for the most part, go out and we buy power off the open market in a competitive fashion. We buy the power, and then we have to have that power delivered from the source to the Lebanon distribution system. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we deliver it to the homes and the businesses. Those transmission fees are the costs that we have to pay to move the power from where it's being generated nationally to Lebanon. And those costs have significantly escalated over the last few years. It's millions of dollars. So by doing kind of a small on-site generation capability, it allows us to eliminate the transmission fees for that amount of power that's being generated locally. And then it also kind of diversifies how we, where the power comes from to our customers. And that's really been a goal of the electric department, is just kind of making sure we don't, have all of our assets kind of in one pot, and just kind of making sure we're diversifying, whether it's breaking up these purchase power contracts over time. We, several years ago, bought a small share of a natural gas generation facility up in Fremont. So it just helps us diversify, our power, capabilities. And, with electric, the market can fluctuate significantly. Yeah. And so, diversifying, the goal is certainly to kind of try to level out those peaks and valleys when it comes to power costs. And I think the city's been very successful. We do a rate study every year with our electric system, and our rates are always, significantly lower than Duke or Dayton providers, and even other municipal electric providers in the area. So ultimately, that cost savings benefits our residents and businesses with lower electric charges.
Is there an estimated percentage that will help during peak times?
Yeah, so our peak demand is in the summer. It's during the hottest day of the year when it's sunny and air conditioning units are kind of at full speed. So we peak at about 75 megawatts. If you look at this on-site solar, it's rated at 9 megawatts of generation. So it's still a relatively small portion of what that peak demand is. But the good thing with solar is that peak generation through solar is going to occur on hot sunny days, which is really kind of the same. That's when we need it. That's when we're peaking with the demand on our system. So percentage wise, it's still not a huge percentage of our total power needs. But again, it just kind of helps diversify that and just kind of level things out.
Do you know how many acres are going to be devoted to the panels?
Yeah, it's about total. It's 3 different parcels, and they're, like I said, they're all city owned. I think the 3 parcels combined, it's about 37 acres total. So yeah, they've started construction. We contracted with Kokosing Solar to do the work. And they've started construction now. The solar panels should be going in a few months with the target of being operational by the end of the year.
Now, it is producing electricity, but being in the floodplain, is that a problem?
Not for solar panels.
Okay.
So, they're kind of elevated on, frames. So, yeah, that was one of the benefits of building them in this floodplain property is that it doesn't obstruct if that floodplain, if water should from Turtle Creek, should kind of overflow into that area, it's not going to impede the flow, and they're going to be elevated so they wouldn't be damaged. So yeah, that was one of the considerations.
Now, besides roads, we also have some new things happening with our trails.
Right. So yeah, we've got a couple of projects that are getting ready to move into construction. And I always tell folks, if you see a trail project in Lebanon, there's a grant behind it every time. That's one of the areas where we've been really successful with securing grants. But later this year, we'll be starting on the Broadway multi-use path. So that's going to run from the fire station north up to Miller Road. Essentially where the bike lane is now, the bike lane is going to be eliminated. And there will be a separate paved bike path, multi-use path constructed behind the curb. So it'll be very similar to what you see along Deerfield Road in front of Countryside Subdivision and the Countryside Y there. So that project is being coordinated with replacement of a water main that needs to be done at the same time. And then it'll end in 2025 with the paving of North Broadway. So the bike lane is going away. Part of the requirement with ODOT and the funding was that the lanes on Broadway still be at 3 lanes. So from kind of a traffic volume, traffic safety standpoint, ODOT's position is that no more than 3 lanes are warranted. And so the curb will actually, on the west side of Broadway, is actually going to kind of get moved into the pavement. Bike lane's going to go away, and then there'll be a separate paved path built. There will be 4 lanes at the fairgrounds. That's one of the questions I do get is obviously with the fair or Apple Fest, there's a peak in traffic volume during certain days of the year. So we are going to maintain 4 lanes at the fairgrounds, but for the most part, the number of lanes you see on Broadway is going to stay the same. You're just going to see the bike lane go away and the curb kind of get moved in. So essentially the pavement's going to get narrowed.
Now, next year, you're going to work on the Bowman Trail. Now,
Right.
most folks probably don't know what the Bowman Trail is.
Yeah, most people probably don't know what the Bowman Trail is or the Bowman Nature Preserve. So the city owns green space that's kind of behind Colony Square Shopping Plaza and then runs along Bypass 48 all the way up to Monroe Road. And it kind of backs up to the residential area, Summit Street and all of that. So again, the city, with the Broadway Trail, the city received a $1.75 million grant to support it. With the Bowman Trail, we received a $1.25 million grant to support the construction of this new multi-use path. That's scheduled for construction in 2025, so it's a little farther out, but it'll essentially link the Lebanon Countryside Trail there at Runyon Field behind the Armory and head north up kind of behind Colony Square Plaza and through a wooded area all the way up to Monroe Road. And so our goal is to continue to look at how we can connect different neighborhoods, different areas to a trail system. Whenever we do kind of a park survey or a community survey, we get a lot of feedback that trails is something that folks want. So yeah, it's another step in that direction, just to kind of interconnect our community with trails that folks can enjoy.
Now, the Bowman here is a former veterinarian. I always refer to him as Doc Bowman.
Yeah, right.
It was his property at one time.
That's my understanding. Yeah, it was his property at one time, and the city secured part of it years ago, and then we were able to get a state grant to expand it probably maybe 8 years ago. And so it's a nice wooded piece of property. There's actually the old rail line. There used to be an old rail line that ran through it. So that's kind of what we're trying to follow, is the old rail corridor up to Monroe Road.
Now, as far as development, how are things changing in Lebanon?
We've got, I would say, the biggest kind of development project that's moving through the process is Parkside. So that's on the west side of Lebanon, off of State Route 63. All of the plans have been approved for Phase 1 construction, and they should be breaking ground on that soon. But Parkside, in total, it's 250 acres, mixed-use development that includes really a wide range of housing opportunities. So there's some apartments there. There'll be some townhomes, obviously single-family homes, as well as an assisted living facility. So really the vision of Parkside is to, be able to cater to a wide range of folks in terms of housing needs. And, there's a 57-acre park that's kind of runs right through the middle of it, again with a trail. And that's going to be the biggest development that Lebanon's seen, certainly when they move into construction. But right now we got a lot of people that want to live in Lebanon, and there's not a lot of homes for sale. So the goal is to take a little bit of pressure off of that. So there was that project that's getting ready to break ground.
No, that's a 10-year plus project.
Oh,
right?
yeah. So in terms of full build out on that, it'll be over 10 years. Those projects are big. They take some time. There's some commercial, lots that are part of that as well. We've got the Lebanon Landing, kind of the townhome project on North Mechanic Street that they've moved equipment in to start work on that, which will be 20 owner-occupied townhomes, just on the north edge of downtown Lebanon. So that'll be a nice project. And then a lot of commercial, commercial type interest. You got Domino's under construction. But Tropical Smoothie is kind of taking up some vacant space in the strip center. Jersey Mike's is going in next to them. We had the tear down of the old Pizza Hut building for the new Valvoline. Dunkin' Donuts is going to be tearing down the Bob Summerall Tire building to build a new facility. So
is Summerall leaving?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they're looking to relocate, at this point in Lebanon. But yeah, they've sold that to Dunkin' Donuts. Tractor Supply, they're going to Planning Commission this month to go into the old Peebles space. So I get asked a lot about that, and it looks like Tractor Supply will be taking most of that space, which is, again, we always try to encourage folks to use existing space before you kind of get into the build new scenario. So it's been good to see, some of these things fill up. And then, Script Coffee just opened up, a week ago now? And they, that's, 535 North Broadway, so they really made a huge investment in fixing that building up to, turn it into a viable business. So it's been great.
Now, there's another coffee shop coming in.
Scooters, yeah, Scooters Coffee, they're going to go in next to the Big Mike's on West Main Street. So
Okay.
they've gotten approvals from the city, the ball's kind of in their court to start construction, but they have been approved from the city standpoint to build a facility right next to Big Mike's on West Main Street.
And that's where the new Domino's is going to be,
Yeah,
along that line.
yeah, along that corridor.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot, and that's, then you got Parkside, so a lot of interest in that corridor. We did, one of the other big road projects that we're working on is we did receive a $5.7 million grant last year to widen State Route 63 in the city's portion. So we're moving into engineering this year to widen it to 3 lanes. And, Parkside Development is responsible for their own widening. And then we will be widening it from Parkside all the way down to Neil Armstrong Way.
Now, where does Parkside begin?
Roughly, if you kind of know where Cardinal Landscaping is,
Okay.
across the street, there's that old farmhouse up on the hill. So it starts about there and then heads west. So it's it's a big project. A lot of traffic on State Route 63. I get asked about that quite a bit. The county is widening State Route 63 to 5 lanes from Monroe all the way to 741. The city's strategy has been really from 741 all the way, through downtown Lebanon to keep it at 3 lanes. Kind of have a bottleneck out there at 741. Our goal is obviously maybe to discourage folks or maybe encourage them, depending on how you look at it, to go an alternate route as they're traveling through here. It's tough. State Route 63 connects 2 interstates, 71 and 75. So you're going to get a decent amount of truck traffic just because of, traveling from interstate to interstate.
It's only about 10 miles, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really pretty close.
Yeah.
So, until Google tells folks there's a quicker way to.
Yeah.
But I think with the development along State Route 63, there's going to be some traffic signals that get installed. We're going to be looking at the feasibility of roundabouts on a couple of intersections as part of our State Route 63 widening project. So I think, one of the thoughts is that ultimately, if we can try to distribute some of that traffic to other roadway networks through the county, take a little pressure off of State Route 63.
Now, I've never seen a big rig go in a traffic circle. But
They're designed that.
They're designed that
yeah,
way.
Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it obviously would be designed to handle truck
Right.
traffic. Yeah.
Now, on smaller development, the city's got a plan to help people improve their companies
We
and
do,
businesses.
yeah. We've got a small business development grant or small business renovation grant program. We've had it for a couple years now. Been very successful, very popular, and it's a matching grant, so the city will match 50% match up to $10,000 grant if you are expanding your business, creating new jobs, activating unused space. We can provide some funding assistance targeting mainly the small business folks. So a lot of the businesses around town over the last few years have taken advantage of that. Broadway Barrel House with their patio expansion years ago. What else? Greenhouse Cafe with their patio expansion. We've had a family dentistry just did a great renovation project and tapped into the grant as well. So always encourage folks, if you're a business owner and you're looking at space, looking at starting a business or expanding your business and need some help with those renovation costs, reach out to the city and get us engaged early on because we may be able to help.
Now, I read in the list of companies which are taking advantage of that, Scripps Coffee took it.
Scripps Coffee, yeah.
Brand new, and it
Yeah.
still took advantage of it.
Yeah, that Scripps Coffee, that's a great example of the type of project we want to incentivize. So you've got a vacant building that needed a lot of work, and so through this grant program, we were able to help with the interior renovation costs to really get that business up and running. So that's a great example of why we started the grant, is to really help people activate space, and it's usually existing buildings, existing tenant space that just needs an investment to start.
Now, considering services, I've read that the police department has added 2 new positions. Is
Right.
that correct?
Yes, yeah, we've been incrementally adding police officer positions, and several of those have been school resource officers. So for the longest time, we just had one SRO officer up at the high school, Lebanon School District. And over the last few years, we've added a second SRO position with Lebanon School District. And then we also just added an SRO position with Lebanon Christian Schools. So, under the school district model, they pay for half of the SRO officer. With Lebanon Christian Schools, they're fully funding that position. But I think it just reflects the importance of school safety and really the need to have professionals kind of on site, working with school systems.
Now, with the fire department, we're right in the middle of a major change in how we fund the fire department. What's going on with that?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, I want to thank the community for their support in passing issue 16 in November, which was the 0.5% income tax increase, all of which gets directed to the fire department to help transition them to a full-time staff department. So with the approval of issue 16 in November, the city committed to reducing the fire levy property tax by 3 mills. And that happened effective January 1st of this year. So everybody that got their tax bills, property tax bills, the Lebanon portion of that tax bill went down by 3 millage points with the approval of the income tax increase last November. We still, though, have that reduced fire levy, which instead of 9 mills is now 6 mills. That existing fire levy expires at the end of this year. It's a 5-year levy. Every 5 years we have to go back to the voters and ask for approval. So this March, on the March ballot, we're asking voters to renew the reduced fire levy and lock that reduction in really for the next 5 years. So it's not a new tax, and it doesn't raise taxes. So I always want to tell folks that. But we still, if you look at the funding model for the department now, with the passage of the income tax increase, that generates about half of the revenue that the department needs. We still rely on the fire levy to generate 38% of the revenue for the department, and then about 12% comes from fees and other sources. So I think it's a good funding model. Again, it kind of diversifies how the department's funded.
Right.
A good portion of its income tax, and we took some of the pressure off of property taxes by reducing that. And that really, it benefits a lot of folks, but certainly our senior citizen community and those on fixed income definitely, I think, benefited from the property tax reduction. Obviously, we're hearing a lot about some of those pressures right now. But the renewal's on the March 19th ballot. You can go to the city's website to get additional information about what it means and the details on it. But it's kind of that second step of the two-step process.
Yeah.
So it, like I said, just locks in that lower property tax for the next 5 years.
Well, it's a renewal, but it's a reduced renewal.
Exactly.
Only 2/3 of what it's replacing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I always, I think we were very focused on making sure we delivered on what we told the voters we would do in November. So, like I said, that property tax got reduced effective January 1st, in the sense that you saw that reduction in your property tax bills this year. We've also already started the process of hiring the full-time firefighter, EMS folks that we said we needed and said we would do. So the transition from a part-time to a full-time fire EMS operation is happening now. We've probably hired about half of the staff we need, and we're into that second round with the remaining. So it's been really, it's been very rewarding to really kind of be able to see the fire EMS model really kind of reflect where we're at with police. 'Cause I always tell folks, like, if you called 911 with a police emergency, you wouldn't expect a part-time, police officer to show up at your doorstep that's maybe
Right.
only got 1 year of 1 year out of school. But that was kind of a little bit of the situation that we were in with the fire and EMS when you have part-time folks that now we're relying on to provide that service.
And these part-time people were often working at several different departments.
Yeah, I mean, that was
different
kind of the
cities.
model is, they were working part-time and kind of to make ends meet, they would work for multiple jurisdictions. So a lot of times if there was a schedule conflict, they'd call off for us, and that would lead to staffing issues on our part. And so, I mean, I think most communities around Lebanon are either in the process or have already transitioned to kind of this full-time staffing model, and excited to kind of be able to do the same here in Lebanon.
Scott, is there anything else we should tell the viewers about how the city is doing right now?
I just ask people to stay informed. If they're watching this, that's great, because this is one way to stay informed about what's going on in the community. Obviously we have information on our website. We have information on our social media. So, I think we've got just an outstanding community here, and we'd love to see people kind of engaged and informed, because there is a lot going on. And but if there are any questions, or if folks need some additional information, please reach out to city staff. That's our job, is to make sure folks are getting good information. And
should they call your office?
They can call my office. They can email me. All my information's on the website, so encourage folks to reach out. And what I don't want is, if you have questions and either we're not getting you the information to answer those questions, or maybe you're getting information from sources that aren't so good.
Right.
So much rather reach out to the city and ask the question, and get a response. So
Well, as I often used to tell my students, knowledge is power. So if you want to know what's going on, you've got to ask questions and find out.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks so much, Scott, for sharing with us how the city is doing. And I'm sure we'll do this again next year.
We will, absolutely. So, thank you for great questions.
Okay. Well, you take care now, and I'll see you around town.